You know, artificial intelligence is absolutely everywhere these days. But let's be honest, the conversation around it is kind of messy, right? It's just this chaotic mix of hype and fear and a whole lot of confusion. So in this explainer, we're going to cut right through all that noise. We're going to give you a really simple but powerful framework to help you think clearly about AI and what it actually means for our future.
Okay, so to see just how confused this whole conversation has become, let's start with a real clash of titans. Seriously, we're going to look at how AI has completely divided some of the world's greatest thinkers. And it's a perfect way to see the problem we're all facing.
I mean, just look at this. It's wild. On one hand, you've got a giant of geopolitics, Henry Kissinger, saying that AI is going to be so profound it'll literally change the fabric of reality. But then, on the other hand, you have the legendary linguist Noam Chomsky, who just dismisses the whole thing as trivial, almost a joke.
So this raises a huge question, right? How on earth can two brilliant minds look at the exact same technology and come away with conclusions that are polar opposites? It seems impossible, but the answer, it turns out, is surprisingly simple.
The answer lies in a whole new way of thinking about AI. It's a framework that helps cut through all this confusion. And it's not about who's right or who's wrong. It's about realizing that they're looking at AI through two fundamentally different lenses.
So, the first lens is what the author Richard Susskind calls process thinking. You can think of this as looking under the hood of a car. Process thinkers are fascinated by the inner workings, the algorithms, the code, and whether it can ever truly replicate the human brain. Their central question is always, but how does it work? And then there's this second lens, outcome thinking. Now, this perspective couldn't care less about the internal mechanics. Outcome thinkers are focused entirely on the results. Their key question is just, what can it do? They're all about the practical impact the technology has on our jobs, our society, our world.
And bam, this explains the whole divide. Chomsky is the ultimate process thinker. He's picking apart AI's internal logic and saying, nope, that's not how humans think. Kissinger, though, is the classic outcome thinker. He's looking at the world-changing results AI can deliver and saying, whoa, they're not actually disagreeing. They're having two completely different conversations.
All right, so now that we have this framework in our back pocket, we can start to use it to spot some of the really common traps and logical fallacies that people fall into when they talk about AI. Have you ever heard someone say something like this? Maybe a lawyer or a doctor, a creative professional. It's a very common, very human reaction to AI. But it's actually based on a huge misunderstanding. Susskind calls this the AI fallacy, and it's basically this mistaken belief that the only way for a machine to do a complex task is to perfectly copy the way a human does it. And here is the absolute key insight. An AI doesn't need to be creative to produce a beautiful image. It doesn't need to think like a grandmaster to win at chess. When the computer Deep Blue beat Garry Kasparov, it wasn't mimicking his brilliant intuition. Nope. It was using raw, brute force to process 300 million moves per second. It took a completely different path to get to a superior outcome.
And believing in that AI fallacy leads people straight into another really common trap. This comforting idea that, sure, AI will revolutionize every field, except, their own. You see this all the time. Doctors point to lawyers point to auditors, and everybody assumes their own work requires some special human process that can't be replicated. They're all falling into the process thinking trap. They forget that patients don't really want doctors. They want health. Clients don't want architects. They want buildings. It's the outcome that matters.
So this relentless focus on outcomes helps us reframe the entire history of AI. It's not this slow march toward trying to perfectly mimic humanity. No, it's an accelerating journey of creating systems that can achieve superhuman results.
So the journey starts back in the 50s with people trying to copy human logic. But the real breakthroughs, the moments that really changed everything, happened when that focus shifted to outcomes. Look at this timeline. Deep Blue's victory in '97, that wasn't about thinking. It was about brute force calculation. AlphaGo's famous creative move in 2016, that was something no human had ever conceived of. And then, of course, 2022, ChatGPT. Each leap was powered by systems designed to achieve superhuman results, not to replicate human processes. This accelerating pace of achievement brings us to the ultimate question. Where is all of this going? Where is this train headed?
Well, Susskind outlines 5 potential futures here, and they range from pretty optimistic to truly mind-bending. Is AI just hype that's going to hit a wall? Will it just be a better version of what we have today? Or are we headed for artificial general intelligence, AGI, where a machine can match the full range of human intellect? And what about beyond that? A superintelligence millions of times smarter than us? Or even a singularity, where humans and AI actually merge to expand consciousness itself?
So, which future should we be planning for? Well, while nobody knows for sure, Susskind argues we cannot afford to just sit back and wait and see. Based on the trajectory we're on right now, he believes the most plausible scenario we have to actively plan for is the arrival of AGI. And he's not talking about 50 years from now, he's talking about as early as 2030. And that brings us right here to the profound challenge ahead, a challenge that this new way of thinking helps us to finally see clearly.
Ultimately, this isn't some technical problem for a few computer scientists to solve in a lab. It's a fundamental human challenge for every single one of us. As Richard Susskind concludes, managing this technology, saving humanity with it and from it, is the single most important task facing our generation. The only question left is, what role will you play?